In a world where no one can be trusted, where no one is what they seem, one man, one crew must stand against impossible odds in order to save the man he didn't know was his son. And that world is Picard Season 3, Episode 3, 17 Seconds. The following video contains spoilers. Viewer discretion is advised. The action is here, with the Titan fleeing from the Shrike, going deeper and deeper into a nebula that may or may not actually be a nebula. The crew is scrambling to get engines back online and keep an eye out for the Shrike. The only problem is, the deeper into the nebula they go, their sensors become less and less effective until they go out completely. I really thought it was interesting that Captain Shaw's solution to that is simply to go look out a window. I don't recall it ever being a solution before, and why hasn't it been prior to this? It's in this episode that we really get to see just how much of a threat Vadic and the Shrike are. Somehow, unbeknownst to the crew at the time, the Shrike is able to track them no matter where they are in the nebula. This later gets discovered by Jack Crusher upon the prompting of a wounded Shaw, and the ramifications change the game entirely. But before I get to that, there are a few things I'd like to talk about first that perhaps aren't so exciting as unraveling more of the mystery. I'll start with the title of the episode, 17 Seconds. This is in reference to a conversation had in a flashback scene of Picard and Riker talking about Riker's newborn son. Riker was captain of the Titan at the time, and he was called down to sickbay when Deanna was giving birth. This turbo lift ride took 17 seconds, and in that time, he saw his son's life flash before his eyes, and he became a father in those few seconds. This will later apply to Picard in regards to Jack. I appreciated this flashback scene even if only to get to see the two of them younger, though the de-aging of Picard seemed a little rough. And because of Riker losing his son later, this leads to him to try to convince Picard not to waste time and to try to make amends with Jack. The scene where Riker is talking to Jack about Picard, saying that despite him being a legend, he's still human, reminded me of why in that Star Trek story I wrote when I was 8, I made Riker my character's dad. This also explains why Riker, when made temporary captain by Captain Shaw, who was severely wounded, was so hesitant to fight and put the lives of the crew at risk. At first it felt a little out of character to me, as does the last scene in the episode that I'll talk about a little later. But given what he's gone through, I understand why he might not be so gung-ho to rush into a fight they likely wouldn't win. It's still frustrating. But it was cool to see Riker in the captain's chair and Picard as his number one. We got to see it a few times in TNG, but I liked that we got another chance to see Riker as captain, though I didn't like what happened to Shaw. Now for the elephant in the room. I can't not talk about the conversation between Picard and Dr. Crusher regarding Jack. Look, I get where Beverly is coming from, but it's disingenuous for her to assume Picard wouldn't have played it safe had he known about Jack. She all but says Jack would have had a target on his back regardless, so why would it have made any difference if Picard had known or not? I feel really bad for Picard here, and he has every right to be angry. Beverly should have told him, because what ends up happening to Jack still would have happened whether Picard was in his life or not. But I'm glad Picard had a backbone during this conversation. From what I've heard about the previous season, or at least season 1, Picard was on an apology tour. So good for him for standing up for himself and standing up to Beverly. This was too important an issue to take lightly. And he should have known. And knowing how Picard felt about it, it made the scene where Beverly was trying to revive Jack after he was exposed to too much Verterium gas made it so much more emotional. Picard experienced his own 17 seconds in the turbo lift going down to sickbay. He's a father now. Because of what happened in the previous episode, Seven has been confined to quarters, and Sydney LaForge goes by to talk to her early on in the episode. Sydney makes a really good point here, one that I think modern Trek has lost sight of. Sydney says that she wanted to prove herself based on her abilities and not just be given special treatment because she's Geordi LaForge's daughter. Starfleet has always been a meritocracy, where you excel based on your skills and not on any other superficial factor. The characters in the older shows have always felt like they've proven themselves. They're meant to be exactly where they are, in the positions they're in. So far, I haven't questioned any of the characters in Season 3 asking, how were you able to get through Starfleet Academy? How did you get assigned to this ship or reach the rank you have? Unlike my reaction to Michael Burnham in Discovery. This makes the world in which Star Trek exists feel more real, and it makes sense. Back to how Vadic and the Shrike are tracking the Titan, Jack, with the help of Seven, realizes they're leaving a trail of Verterium gas. I really appreciate that Jack is given initiative to help figure out what's going on, and he's not just relegated to being a character who sits by while everyone else is trying to protect him. While trying to stop the leak, Jack is attacked by a nameless crew member who reveals the real bad guys, the Changelings. I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't super excited about the Changelings being involved at first, because if they were to come back, I wish it would have been for a Deep Space Nine show, but I've come to terms with it now. And like I mentioned in my last video, aside from the big thing being the Changelings, there are a lot of DS9 references. I expected Voyager because of 7, but I wasn't expecting such a big connection to DS9. It makes me really want a DS9 send-off show now. And bring back Jeffrey Combs. Heck, let him play every character, he's got the range. But I would be happy with him playing a long-lost Wayun clone or something too. And now that we know the Changelings are involved, I'm inclined to believe that Jack's comment in the first episode about different faces was a reference to them. And it makes me wonder if the Fenris Rangers, Klingons, and Starfleet officers who attacked and tried to capture him were also Changelings. Or maybe they just worked for them. Either way, going back and catching those things made it feel like we were given subtle hints all along. Around the same time, Worf and Raffi also learn of the Changeling connection. And just an aside, Worf is so chill now, and he's given some really great lines. He's the funniest part of this whole season with his totally serious delivery of lines like, "Beheadings are on Wednesdays." I'd watch a show that was just of Worf giving us those one-liners. I just really love him. And I really liked his comment about Odo, about him being a man of honor. While he didn't outright name him, Worf said that Odo reached out to him to tell him about the group of renegade changelings, the same ones out to get them now. The plot definitely thickens at this point with their reveal, and the fact that something else besides the portal weapon, which I'll talk about in just a second, was stolen from Daystrom Station. And now onto the meat of the matter. The Titan, when the engines are operational, makes a run for it. The only problem is, the Shrike has a portal weapon, the same one used to destroy the Starfleet Recruitment Center in the first episode. Each time the Titan tries to escape, Vadic orders the weapon to be used, opening a portal in front of the Titan. The Titan goes through, and comes out of another portal further inside the nebula. This is eventually used against them in the worst way. After going back into the nebula, with the leak neutralized and Picard trying to convince Riker to fight, the Titan tries to get behind the Shrike to attack, but the Shrike is facing them. Riker orders an attack, and it might have worked, but the Shrike opens another portal, and the torpedoes go into a portal and come out right behind them, hitting the Titan. They end up shooting and crippling themselves to the point that they're unable to get free of the gravity well that's pulling them further into the nebula that may not actually be a nebula. This is the other part where Riker didn't feel like Riker. He wanted to run, Picard wanted to fight. Riker listened to Picard, and now they're in even more trouble. Riker angrily orders Picard off the bridge and tells him that he just got them all killed. I don't like how it feels like Riker is giving up so easily, and I hate that he and Picard are at odds. That doesn't seem very in character to me, but since I know how it all works out, it's fine. But it was frustrating on my first watch through when I had to wait a week between each episode. I'm giving this episode another 8 out of 10. It had really great moments between the original characters, just enough action, and gave us just enough information to keep me invested. I was left on the edge of my seat, wanting to know how they were going to get out of their dire situation. But like I had to wait to find out until the next episode, I'll save that for my next video. So until then, this is Shlyn signing out.